Commander Rhea Vasquez tightened her grip on the armrest of her seat, her knuckles turning white. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Beside her, Darius Kane, the pilot, ran his fingers over the holographic controls, his expression unreadable. The ship's onboard AI, Holo, broke the silence. Approaching event horizon in 60 seconds. Last chance to abort. No one spoke. There was no turning back. A static-filled transmission crackled through the comms. It was from the Zephyrians, the most advanced alien species in the sector. Their cold, emotionless voice filled the cockpit. Terran vessel U.S. Valkyrie, turn back now. The abyss has consumed all who dared enter. No ship has ever returned. Do not challenge the inevitable. Rhea exhaled, her pulse steady. She pressed the transmission button. Message received. We're going in. A pause. Then the Zephyrian voice, softer this time. Humans, always so reckless. The transmission cut off. Darius chuckled, shaking his head. Guess that's their way of saying goodbye. Rhea didn't smile. She looked back at the crew in the observation deck. Scientists, engineers, soldiers. Some were gripping their harnesses, others whispering silent prayers. One of them, Dr. Elias Carter, the lead physicist, was staring at the swirling vortex outside with awe. It's beautiful, he muttered. It wasn't. It was terrifying. The ship trembled as it crossed into the outer gravitational pull. Warning lights flickered across the control panels. Holo's voice remained eerily calm. Gravity distortions increasing. Structural integrity holding at 97%. Rhea's fingers hovered over the emergency thrusters, her heart hammering. Then suddenly, the ship lurched forward, as if pulled by invisible hands. What the hell was that? Darius shouted. His hands flew over the controls, but they were no longer in control. The ship was being dragged in. Dr. Carter's voice trembled with excitement and fear. We've crossed the photon sphere. There's no going back now. Outside, space itself warped and twisted. The stars elongated into streaks of impossible colors, and shadows stretched where there should be none. It was as if reality itself was breaking apart. Hull integrity at 89%. Holo announced. Multiple distortions detected. Something is interfering with our trajectory. Rhea's mind raced. Something. What could exist inside a black hole? The ship suddenly shook violently. Sparks flew from the control panels. Alarms blared. We're being pulled off course. Darius shouted. I don't know where we're going. Dr. Carter's voice rose in panic. This isn't normal. The math doesn't. A sickening wave of force hit the ship, like an invisible tsunami crushing them from all sides. Rhea gasped as her vision blurred, gravity itself twisting. She barely registered the screams of her crew before. Everything went black. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no time. Then, the ship slammed back into existence with a force that sent bodies flying. The cockpit screens flickered. Rhea gasped for air, her vision swimming. Darius groaned, pushing himself up. What just happened? Rhea blinked, trying to regain her focus. She looked at the screens, expecting to see the swirling void of the black hole. Instead, there was a structure. An impossible, massive structure, floating in the darkness. It was ancient, its metallic surface cracked and scarred, stretching far beyond what the ship's sensors could detect. Towers of twisted steel rose into the void, pulsing faintly with dying lights. Dr. Carter's breath hitched. Dear God, it's a Dyson sphere. Rhea's blood ran cold. A Dyson sphere inside a black hole. That was impossible. Then the ship's sensors picked up something else. A signal. Weak, faint, but unmistakably artificial. And it was coming from inside the sphere. Before Rhea could speak, Holo's voice rang through the ship, sharp and urgent. Unknown energy signature detected. High probability of intelligent origin. Then, for the first time ever, the AI's voice wavered. "Commander, we are not alone." The ship drifted in the eerie silence of the void, surrounded by the impossible structure. The Dyson sphere loomed ahead, its vast, metallic surface stretching into infinity. It was old, far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. Cracks and scars covered its once pristine hull, and faint blue lights flickered weakly, as if clinging to life. Commander Ria Vasquez's hands trembled as she adjusted the display. A Dyson sphere was supposed to be a structure built around a star, harvesting its energy. But this one was floating inside a black hole. That was beyond impossible. Darius Kane, still gripping the controls tightly, muttered under his breath, "I don't like this. We shouldn't be here." Dr. Elias Carter, however, was mesmerized. His eyes were wide with wonder as he leaned closer to the screen. "This changes everything. If someone built this, it means they found a way to survive inside a black hole." Holo's voice cut through the tension. "Energy readings are unstable. The structure is on the verge of collapse. I advise extreme caution." Ria exhaled slowly, forcing herself to focus. "What about that signal? Can you trace its source?" The AI processed for a moment before responding. "The signal is weak, but it is coming from deep within the structure. I estimate it originates from a central core. Probability suggests it was designed for long-term communication." Ria nodded. "Then we go in." Darius turned his head sharply. "Are you serious? We barely made it through that gravitational anomaly. And now you want to take the ship inside that thing?" Ria met his gaze with unwavering determination. "If there's someone, alive in there, we need to find out. We didn't come all this way to turn back now." For a long moment, Darius said nothing. Then he sighed, shaking his head. "Fine. But if this thing starts falling apart while we're inside, I'm getting us out, no matter what." Dr. Carter grinned, his excitement barely contained. "This is history in the making." U.S. Valkyrie slowly approached the Dyson sphere's outer shell, its thrusters firing in careful bursts. The ship's searchlights illuminated jagged edges of ruined metal, debris floating aimlessly in the vacuum. It was clear that something had damaged this place. As they neared a massive breach in the sphere's surface, the ship's hull vibrated slightly. Holo's voice turned sharp. "Gravitational fluctuations detected inside the structure. Exercise extreme caution." The breach was wide enough for Valkyrie to pass through. On the other side, darkness swallowed them whole. Then suddenly, the inside of the sphere came to life. Faint lights flickered along the walls, illuminating a vast, hollow world. Towers of alien architecture stretched upwards, their surfaces smooth yet fractured. Some buildings had collapsed entirely, leaving behind floating wreckage. In the distance, an artificial sun, dim and flickering, struggled to provide light. Ria felt her chest tighten. This was once a thriving civilization. Now it was nothing more than a graveyard. "By the stars," Darius whispered. Dr. Carter's voice was hushed with reverence. "Who built this?" Olo spoke again. "Unknown. There are no recognizable patterns matching any known galactic species." Ria swallowed. "What about life signs?" There was a pause before the AI answered. "No biological life detected." Carter frowned. "Nothing. That doesn't make sense. Someone sent that signal." A chill ran down Ria's spine. If it wasn't biological, then what was it? As if in response, a hollow mechanical voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "Survivors detected. Identify." The crew froze. Darius's hands hovered over the controls. "Please tell me that was Holo." But the AI responded immediately. "Negative. This transmission is originating from within the sphere." Ria's heart pounded. She pressed the comms button. "This is Commander Ria Vasquez of the Terran Federation vessel U.S. Valkyrie. Who am I speaking to?" Static filled the channel. Then the voice returned, glitching, ancient. Designate Omega-7, last guardian of the sanctum. Dr. Carter looked like he'd seen a ghost. An AI. Olo processed the information. Omega-7 is not of human origin. Its language structure and processing speed indicate an intelligence far superior to mine. Rhea kept her voice steady. Omega-7, we received your signal. We are explorers. We mean no harm. Silence. Then. Too late. You should not have come. A sudden energy pulse rippled through the structure, and the ship lurched violently. Alarm sirens blared. Darius cursed, gripping the controls. What the hell was that? Holo's voice was urgent. Massive power fluctuation detected. Energy sources are destabilizing. This entire structure is on the verge of collapse. Rhea turned back to the comms. Omega-7, what's happening? The AI's voice came back, now distorted and rapid. The Devourer stirs. You have awakened it. You must leave. Dr. Carter paled. The Devourer. What is that? A deep, inhuman rumble echoed through the sphere. For the first time, Holo's voice hesitated. Commander, something else is here. Outside the ship, the darkness shifted. Massive, monolithic structures, once thought to be part of the ruins, began to move. Red lights flickered to life, forming eyes. The air inside the ship turned cold. Omega-7's voice came through one last time. Run. Darkness stirred. The ruins of the Dyson sphere, once cold and lifeless, now pulsed with a deep, unnatural energy. Red lights flickered in the distance, growing brighter with each passing second. The thing that had been dormant for millennia was waking up. Commander Rhea Vasquez felt a chill creep up her spine as the hollow voice of Omega-7 echoed through the ship. You must leave. Now. Darius Kane's hands were tight on the controls, his voice tense. Leaving sounds great. The only problem. We don't know how to get out of this death trap. Dr. Elias Carter, still staring at the massive structures shifting in the darkness, spoke in a hushed voice. We triggered something. The Devourer. It's real. A deep vibration ran through the ship, not from an explosion, not from an impact, but from something alive. It was as if the entire Dyson sphere was waking up, stretching after an endless slumber. Holo's voice was sharper than before. Gravitational fluctuations are rising. Unknown energy readings detected. Commander, something is moving toward us. Rhea's pulse pounded in her ears. What exactly is moving? There was a pause. Then the AI's voice came back, lower than before. Everything. The ruins were shifting. Massive structures lifting off the ground, revealing jagged metallic limbs. The monolithic remains of buildings weren't buildings at all. They were machines, ancient sentinels with long-forgotten purpose. And now, they were turning toward the U.S. Valkyrie. The closest one, easily the size of a battleship, unfolded itself, metal screeching as it straightened its limbs. A single blinding red eye ignited in the center of its head, locking onto the human vessel. Dr. Carter gasped. It sees us. The machine's limbs snapped into place. Then, it moved. The first attack came without warning. A pulse of pure energy blasted toward the ship, narrowly missing as Darius yanked the controls hard to the left. The beam of red light struck a floating section of debris, disintegrating it instantly. That was too close, Darius shouted. Rhea gritted her teeth. Holo, can we fight back? Negative, the AI responded. Our weapons will have no effect on a construct of that size. Recommend evasive maneuvers. Rhea turned toward Omega-7, whose voice still echoed through the comms. If you want us to survive, you'd better help us. Omega-7's response came faster than before, as if it had been waiting. There is an escape route. A wormhole generator exists within the sphere. If activated, it will take you out of the event horizon. Darius exhaled sharply. Finally, some good news. Where is it? Rhea demanded. There was a moment of hesitation. Then Omega-7 spoke again. deep inside the core, past the Devourer. Silence fell over the crew. Dr. Carter was the first to speak, his voice unsteady. "That's not good." Another shockwave rocked the ship as a second machine came to life, its long metallic arms reaching for them. Darius pulled the thrusters into full power, weaving through the shifting ruins as another energy blast streaked past. Rhea grabbed onto the nearest railing to steady herself. "Hello, can we make it?" "Survivability estimate, 7%. "Great," Darius muttered. "No choice," Rhea said firmly. "We go through." The Valkyrie dove deeper into the crumbling cityscape of the Dyson sphere, twisting between shattered structures and mechanical horrors rising from the darkness. The red eyes of the Devourer's sentinels tracked them relentlessly. One of the machines leaped forward, its clawed arms reaching out to snatch them from the air. Darius barrel-rolled the ship, barely escaping as the massive metal fingers clamped shut just inches away. Carter clutched his seat. "This is insane." Rhea ignored him, eyes locked on the flickering map Hilo had projected. "Omega-7, we need more speed. Is there a faster route?" Omega-7's voice was urgent. "Yes, but it is dangerous." Rhea let out a dry laugh. "Everything is dangerous. Just tell us." A new pathway illuminated on the map, leading directly downward, into the heart of the Dyson sphere. "The gravity is strongest there," Hilo warned. "If we get too close to the singularity, we won't be able to escape." Rhea nodded. "Then we don't stop." Darius clenched his jaw. "Hold on tight." The Valkyrie nosedived, plunging toward the core of the Dyson sphere. The sentinels followed, their massive forms crashing through the ruins in pursuit. One of them fired another energy pulse, but Darius swerved at the last second, causing the blast to strike another machine instead. The sentinel exploded on impact. Dr. Carter gasped. "They can hurt each other." Rhea's eyes flashed with realization. "Then let's use that to our advantage." Darius grinned. "I like the way you think." The Valkyrie twisted between the war machines, dodging their grasp as they accidentally struck one another in their attempts to crush the human vessel. The Devourer's own forces were destroying themselves in their relentless pursuit, but they weren't the real threat. Holo's voice cut through the noise, deadly calm. "The Devourer is waking up." Rhea's breath caught in her throat as she saw it. Deep in the core, beyond the battling sentinels, something far larger than anything they had seen before was rising. A titanic structure, pulsing with dark energy, slowly unfolded itself. Massive, interlocking plates shifted, revealing a single burning red eye, the size of a city. Omega-7's voice returned, filled with something that almost sounded like fear. "It has seen you." A low, deafening hum resonated through the Dyson sphere, and suddenly, everything started collapsing. Walls of metal peeled away as the ancient structure began imploding, drawn toward the singularity. Debris spiraled in every direction, and the sentinels, sensing the Devourer's awakening, turned their attention away from the humans and toward their god. The Devourer raised one massive arm-like appendage and unleashed a shockwave of pure destruction. Entire sections of the Dyson sphere were obliterated. Darius gritted his teeth, hands moving fast over the controls. "Tell me that wormhole is still active." Omega-7's voice crackled. "It is, but not for long." Rhea's jaw tightened. "Then we finish this. Full speed ahead." The Valkyrie streaked toward the core, the titanic red eye of the Devourer burning in the darkness behind them. The final battle had begun. The U.S. Valkyrie hurtled toward the core, the ship vibrating violently as the collapsing Dyson sphere tore itself apart. Behind them, the Devourer loomed, an ancient, godlike machine with a single burning red eye that pulsed with unnatural energy. Commander Rhea Vasquez gripped her seat as another shockwave tore through the structure. Massive chunks of debris spiraled in all directions, some as large as entire cities. The sentinels, once mindless guardians of this lost civilization, had turned their attention away from the humans and were now throwing themselves at the Devourer in a desperate attempt to stop it. But nothing could stop it. Holo's voice cut through the chaos. Wormhole generator detected. 30 kilometers ahead. Dr. Elias Carter exhaled in relief. We're almost there. Darius Kane, still gripping the controls, wasn't convinced. Yeah? Then why does this feel way too easy? Rhea knew he was right. Nothing about this had been easy so far. And the Devourer wasn't going to let them leave without a fight. As if on cue, the massive red eye of the machine locked onto them. The ship's alarm screamed as something enormous moved in the darkness. A piece of the Dyson sphere, easily 1,000 times the size of their ship, was ripped from its foundations and hurled toward them. "Vuraisi," Rhea shouted. Darius yanked the controls, pushing the ship into a hard roll. The massive chunk of debris missed them by meters, spinning into the abyss behind them. The gravity shifts nearly tore the ship apart. That was too close. Carter gasped, clutching his seat. Olo interrupted. The Devourer is charging another attack. Estimated impact. Catastrophic. Rhea gritted her teeth. They had to act now. Omega-7, we need that wormhole open, now, she shouted into the comms. The ancient AI's voice was weaker than before, as if even it was struggling to hold on. Initiating final sequence, but it requires a manual override. Someone must activate it from the control station. Silence fell over the bridge. Darius let out a bitter laugh. Of course it does. Rhea didn't hesitate. I'm going. Darius spun around in shock. Like hell you are. Someone has to do it, she snapped. We have no time to argue. Carter's voice was strained. The station is inside the core. That means someone has to go out there, into the heart of this collapsing nightmare, and stay behind. Rhea's expression hardened. I know. Darius clenched his fists. Then I'm going with you. No, she said firmly. You're the best damn pilot we've got. If you don't fly this ship through that wormhole, no one gets out. Darius was about to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. He hated this, but he knew she was right. Carter swallowed hard. Commander, are you sure? Rhea forced a smile. Get Valkyrie home. That's an order. Before anyone could stop her, she grabbed a plasma rifle from the weapons rack and ran toward the airlock. Holo's voice followed her. Good luck, Commander. She stepped into the cold void of space, her mag boots clamping onto the surface of the collapsing Dyson sphere. In the distance, the wormhole generator hummed weakly, its control station half buried under debris. Rhea pushed forward, her heart pounding. Every step was a fight. The gravity shifts, the collapsing metal, the energy discharges, it all threatened to crush her. Then she saw it. The Devourer was moving toward her. It had noticed her. Rhea ran. She leaped over broken platforms, dodging falling debris, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The control station was just ahead. She could make it. The Devourer attacked. A beam of energy ripped through the Dyson sphere, obliterating entire sections of the ruins. Rhea jumped, just as the ground beneath her disintegrated. She slammed into the console, gasping in pain. Her suit's oxygen warning flashed red, but she ignored it. Her fingers flew over the ancient controls. The system barely responded, its circuits fried from centuries of decay. Come on. Come on. The Valkyrie's comm crackled. Warishie. Darius's voice was frantic. Tell me you're alive. She coughed, forcing her voice steady. Still here, just a little busy. Holo's voice was calm despite the chaos. Commander, I have interfaced with the system. Wormhole activation is at 60%. You must manually engage the final sequence. Rhea's hand hovered over the final lever. She took a deep breath. This was it. She pressed the control. The wormhole ignited. A swirling vortex of blue energy erupted in the distance, a tunnel leading back to the real universe. Darius shouted in relief. It's open. Rhea, let's go. But she wasn't done yet, because the Devourer was still there. The monstrous machine turned its gaze away from the Sentinels, its glowing eye now focused solely on the wormhole. It was going to follow them. Rhea couldn't let that happen. She opened her comms one last time. "Darius," she swallowed hard. "I need you to leave. Now." Silence. Then his voice, low and broken. "No. That's an order," she whispered. Darius's breathing was heavy. He knew what she was going to do. "Rhea, don't." She fired her thrusters. She launched herself straight at the Devourer, a tiny human, racing toward an unstoppable god. The Devourer turned to face her, its massive body shifting as it prepared another blast. Rhea grinned. "Come and get me, you bastard." She detonated her suit's energy core. A brilliant explosion tore through the darkness. The shockwave ripped through the Devourer's core, sending it spiraling backward. Its red eye flickered, then shattered. The Valkyrie shot through the wormhole, escaping just as the Dyson sphere collapsed into oblivion. The last thing Darius saw before the wormhole sealed shut was Rhea's light fading into the dark. She had won, but she was gone. Silence. For a moment, there was nothing but an endless, crushing void. The darkness stretched forever, swallowing everything. The U.S. Valkyrie spun wildly as it shot out of the wormhole, tumbling into real space. Alarms screamed across the ship, sparks flew from the consoles, and the crew struggled to regain control. Darius Kane's hands gripped the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. His breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. She was gone. "Commander Vasquez," Dr. Elias Carter's voice cracked over the comms. "Rhea, do you copy?" No response. The bridge was eerily quiet, except for the heavy breathing of the crew. Holo's voice finally broke the silence. No life signs detected. Commander Vasquez did not escape. Darius slammed his fist against the console, his vision blurring. He had known it was coming. The moment she turned back toward the Devourer, he had known. But knowing didn't make it any easier. Carter lowered his head, his fingers tightening around his seat's armrest. She saved us," he whispered. No one spoke, because what could they say? The ship drifted in the vastness of space, still intact, but barely. The A responded immediately. Severe structural damage. Engine output at 20%. Hull integrity holding. But we require immediate repairs. Darius nodded. "Carter, check on the crew. Make sure everyone's still breathing." The scientist hesitated before nodding, unbuckling his restraints and moving toward the medbay. Darius stayed at the controls, staring at the empty seat where Rhea should have been. The ship felt wrong without her, but she had made her choice, and now they had to live with it. The Valkyrie drifted for hours, the crew working in near silence, repairing what they could. The weight of loss hung over them like a heavy shadow. Then, suddenly, Holo's voice returned, sharper than before. "Incoming transmission detected." Darius frowned. "From where?" "Unknown origin. Encrypted frequency." "Shall I decrypt?" His pulse quickened. "Do it." Static filled the speakers, a garbled signal, a distorted voice, weak and barely recognizable. Then, "Valkyrie, do you copy?" Darius's heart stopped. Carter, who had just stepped back onto the bridge, froze in place. The voice was faint, broken, barely more than a whisper, but there was no mistaking it. "This is Commander Vasquez. If anyone can hear me, I'm still here." For a moment, nobody spoke. The crew stared at each other, eyes wide with shock. Darius grabbed the comms control, his voice urgent. "Rhea, where are you?" Static. Then, "I don't know. I activated my emergency beacon, but my suit, it's barely holding together. I can't see anything. Just darkness." Darius shot up from his seat. "Can we track her signal?" Olo responded immediately. Attempting triangulation. Signal unstable. Commander Vasquez is no longer in standard space. She appears to be caught in a gravity anomaly. Carter's face paled. She's in the event horizon. Darius's stomach twisted. The Devourer had been pulled into the black hole when the Dyson sphere collapsed. If Rhea was still alive, it meant she was trapped inside the gravitational abyss. No ship had ever escaped from that. Carter shook his head. There's no way we can reach her. She's beyond the point of no return. But Darius wasn't listening. His mind was already racing. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Hello, how long can her suit last? At current power levels, approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That was all the time they had. Darius clenched his jaw. We're going after her. Carter's eyes widened. Are you insane? We barely made it out the first time. We're not leaving her. Darius snapped. Not after everything she did for us. But that's an order. Carter hesitated, then sighed, running a hand through his hair. You're really not giving me a choice, are you? Darius turned back to the controls, already rerouting power to the engines. Hello, plot the best trajectory toward Rhea's location. Find me a way in and a way out. The AI responded quickly. Acknowledged. Warning. This maneuver has a high probability of failure. Darius smirked. Wouldn't be the first time. The Valkyrie roared to life, its damaged engines pushing beyond their limits. The crew strapped in, the tension thick in the air. The ship dove back toward the abyss. The gravitational forces immediately started pulling them in, alarms blaring as the hull strained under the pressure. But Darius didn't slow down. He pushed forward, gripping the controls with a determination he hadn't felt in a long time. Hello, do you have a lock on her? Signal reacquired. Commander Vasquez is 2,000 meters ahead. Darius narrowed his eyes. Hold on, Rhea. We're coming. Through the thick haze of swirling debris, they saw her, a tiny figure floating in the void, her suit barely intact. She wasn't moving. Carter cursed. She's unconscious. Darius didn't hesitate. He unstrapped himself, grabbed a tether, and headed for the airlock. Carter's eyes widened. What the hell are you doing? Darius smirked. Saving my commander. Then he launched himself into space. The gravitational pull was immense, threatening to drag him deeper. But he pushed forward, his thrusters firing in short bursts. Rhea was just ahead, her suit's lights flickering. He reached out and grabbed her. Her vitals were weak, but still there. I've got her, he shouted. Carter's voice came through the comms. Good. Now get back before we all die. Darius fired his thrusters, pulling them both toward the ship. The Valkyrie was already moving, fighting against the gravitational pull. The engines screamed. The hull groaned. The ship trembled under the strain. Come on, Carter muttered. Darius reached the airlock, pulling Rhea inside just as the ship engaged full thrusters. With a final burst of power, the Valkyrie broke free, escaping the black hole's grasp. As soon as the airlock sealed, Darius pulled off Rhea's helmet, his heart pounding. Rhea. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she gasped, sucking in air. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed and confused. Darius let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Took you long enough. She gave a weak smile. Had to make it dramatic. Carter laughed, shaking his head. The crew cheered. The Valkyrie had survived. And this time, so had Rhea. Darkness surrounded them. The U.S. Valkyrie drifted in the void, barely holding together after their desperate rescue of Rhea. The ship's engines sputtered, systems flickered, and the hull groaned under the stress of the battle, and the gravity well, they had barely escaped. Rhea Vasquez lay on a stretcher in the med bay, her breathing shallow but steady. Darius Kane sat beside her, still gripping her hand, as if afraid she might disappear again. Dr. Elias Carter checked the vitals on his tablet. She's stable, but she needs medical attention soon. Darius exhaled in relief, his heartbeat finally slowing. She was alive. That was all that mattered. Then Holo's voice cut through the temporary peace. Warning, multiple energy signatures detected. Incoming vessels. Darius's stomach twisted. You have got to be kidding me. Carter turned to the nearest screen, his face going pale. It's them. Through the shattered viewport, massive alien warships materialized from the darkness. Their elongated, obsidian hulls shimmered under the faint glow of distant stars. The supremacy had arrived. Darius clenched his jaw. They had barely survived the Devourer. And now the supremacy, the empire that had tried to wipe out humanity, was here to finish the job. Olo continued. Enemy fleet is locking weapons. Estimated time until first strike, 1 minute. Carter ran a hand through his hair, his voice tense. We don't have weapons. We don't have shields. And we sure as hell don't have a way to outrun them. Darius stood up, his mind racing. Then we improvise. Carter raised an eyebrow. Improvise what? We're stuck in a floating coffin. Rhea stirred weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. We still have Omega-7. Both men turned to her in shock. Darius's eyes widened. You think it still works? AOO answered. Omega-7 systems remain functional, though significantly weakened. However, activating it within such close proximity to the enemy fleet carries extreme risk. Carter frowned. Wait, what are we talking about? Darius smirked. A parting gift from our ancient AI friend. A wormhole generator. Carter's jaw dropped. You mean, we can escape? Rhea forced a weak smile. If we time it right. Darius turned to Holo. How fast can you activate it? Initiating now. Wormhole formation in 45 seconds. Outside, the Supremacy Fleet charged their weapons. Energy beams glowed across their hulls, ready to annihilate the Valkyrie in an instant. Holo counted down. 30 seconds. Darius took his seat. Carter, strap in. This is going to be rough. Carter hurried to his chair, securing the restraints. You're really betting our lives on this? Darius grinned. Damn right I am. The Supremacy ships fired. Blazing beams of energy tore through space, heading straight for them. Holo counted down. 15 seconds. The wormhole began to form, a swirling vortex of unstable energy opening right in front of them. Carter gripped his chair. It's not stable. Darius gritted his teeth. It doesn't have to be. The enemy beams closed in, seconds away from impact. Holo counted down. 5 seconds. Darius punched the thrusters. The Valkyrie shot forward, its damaged engines roaring as they pushed toward the collapsing wormhole. The ship shook violently, panels bursting, sparks flying. The enemy's weapons struck, but they missed. The Valkyrie emerged from the other side, tumbling into the orbit of a distant planet. The ship groaned and shuddered, alarms blaring as the crew tried to regain control. Darius wrestled with the controls. Holo, where the hell are we? The AI processed for a moment before responding. Unknown system. However, atmosphere is breathable. Gravity is stable. Carter blinked. Wait, are you saying we landed somewhere safe? Darius let out a shaky breath, staring at the massive blue-green planet below. Looks like it. Rhea, still weak, smirked. Told you it would work. Darius chuckled. Never doubted you for a second. The Valkyrie slowly stabilized in orbit. The crew sat in stunned silence, realizing the impossible. They had escaped. Carter leaned back in his seat, exhaling heavily. We should be dead. Darius grinned. Yeah, but we're not. Aolo spoke again. Incoming signal detected. It is human. Rhea's eyes widened. Wait, there are humans out here. The comm crackled. Then, a voice, clear and strong. Unknown vessel, this is the United Terran Fleet. Identify yourselves. Darius and Rhea exchanged stunned looks. Humanity had survived, and they weren't alone. Darius activated the comm, grinning. "This is the U.S. Valkyrie. We've got one hell of a story to tell." As the fleet moved to intercept them, the crew finally let themselves breathe. They had survived the impossible, but their journey was only just beginning. The void of space had never felt so silent. The war against the Zorthak was supposed to be the end, the final battle, the ultimate victory for humanity. But now, as General Ethan Drake stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, he realized the truth. This war had only been a prelude. The ancient force that had awoken in deep space was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The Zorthak had been running from it, fearing it for centuries, maybe even longer. And now, that dark force had turned its attention toward them. Drake watched the sensors display, his crew silent as they analyzed the readings. The massive black structure drifted through the wreckage of the battlefield, its tendrils consuming everything in its path. But it wasn't alone. Across the system, more of these entities were emerging. Not ships, not life as they knew it. Something beyond comprehension. "Sir," the communications officer whispered. "They're absorbing the wreckage, breaking it down at a molecular level." Drake's mind raced. The way these entities moved, the way they fed, it wasn't just destruction. It was erasure. "Are they communicating?" Drake asked. The officer hesitated, then shook his head. "Not in any way we understand." Drake exhaled. Humanity had barely won against the Zorthak, and now they faced something that had made the mighty empire tremble in fear. A deep hum resonated through the Nemesis, vibrating through the hull. The bridge lights flickered. The crew tensed. Then, a voice, not spoken, not transmitted, but something deeper, pressed into their minds. "You are not meant to be here." Drake clenched his jaw. "What the hell is that?" The science officer's face had gone pale. "I had no, sir. But it didn't come from our systems." The voice returned, deeper, colder. "You were forgotten. And yet, you return." Drake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Forgotten." He turned toward his officers. "Get me a full scan of those things. Now." The screens flickered, data poured in. What they saw made Drake's blood run cold. These entities weren't just ancient. They were old enough to predate the Zorthak Empire, older than the ruins humanity had found in deep space. And buried deep within the data, something even more disturbing appeared. A signal. Weak, almost hidden, buried beneath layers of interference. A human signal. Drake's eyes widened. "What is that?" The officer frantically worked the controls. "It's impossible, sir. It's an old Earth distress beacon." For a long moment, no one spoke. Earth had been lost centuries ago when the Zorthak invaded. Humanity had scattered, fought back, survived in the shadows. But this signal meant one thing. Earth was still out there. Drake straightened. His mission had been about survival, revenge. But now there was something greater at stake. "Open a fleet-wide channel," he ordered. The comms officer nodded, and a second later, every ship in the human fleet received the message. "This is General Drake," he said. "For too long we've been fighting to survive. We thought we had lost everything. But now, we know the truth. Earth still calls to us." The crew listened in stunned silence. "This war isn't over," Drake continued. "Not against the Zorthak, not against this new enemy. Humanity was never meant to fade into the dark. We were never meant to be forgotten." He turned to the holographic map showing the signal's location. "We go back, we find Earth, and no matter what stands in our way." He clenched his fist. "Humanity returns.